Welcome again to our 24-25 AGM Lead Office Hour. I want to start by welcoming you. We're excited to begin this school year in implementing the alternative growth measure, the Universal Reading Screener. Congratulations on being named your district or charter's AGM lead. And in our training today, we're going to go over the roles and responsibilities and what it means to be the AGM lead. But first, I want to introduce you to our educator effectiveness team. With us today is Martha Moore. She's our senior director of our educator effectiveness team. Martha.
Good afternoon.
We also have Amy Floyd with us. Amy is our director of data and district support. She's all things T and Compass, strategic compensation. So she's working with you all on your differentiated pay, your vacancy data, educator diversity goals. I am Tracy Riddle. Oh, hey, Amy. I'm Tracy Riddle. I'm the Director of Educator Effectiveness. So I'm all things alternative growth measures. That includes the student growth portfolio, as well as this universal reading screener. We call it the AGM. I also work alongside the team evaluation team. We have Micah Fager with us today. Hey, Micah. Micah is the director of team training and support. She is who you are working with to get your observers trained this year. And she also is the queen of our team website. So welcome and thank you for being with us today, Micah. Sarah Brown was not able to be with us today, but Sarah is also on our team and she is all things recognition. She is our recognition and communication coordinator. She has 8 different educator recognition programs, 4 advisory councils, as well as she manages our communications. We currently don't have a team contractor, but we hope to introduce you to our team contractor before the school year is up. So that is a position that we are holding right now. It is vacant. Also on this meeting today, we have 2 members of the student support team. We have with us Jessica Dainty and Haley Richardson. They manage the Universal Reading Screener contract. So we thank them for joining us in this meeting today.
Jessica, Haley, if you'll speak, your cameras will pop up for everybody to see you.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you both. So today we are going to talk about what is the AGM, what is this alternative growth measure, the Universal Reading Screener, and what are your roles and responsibilities as the lead. We're going to talk about your teachers receiving a growth score from their Universal Reading Screener. I'm going to go over your next steps for things that you can be working on after this meeting. I'm going to share the resources we have available, as well as the multiple avenues of support. So first and foremost, I want to share with you our team website. To find the team website, you will go to team-tn.org. Here on the homepage, you will see a tab that says AGM, and that is our alternative growth measure page. We have a description on this page of what is an alternative growth measure. And so I want to just summarize this description a little bit for you. First, the law states that every district and charter must choose one alternative growth measure for a non-tested teacher group. And we have 7 non-tested teacher groups that we can support. That's pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, fine arts, PE, and world language. So every district and charter has chosen one of those non-tested teacher groups to receive an individual growth measure from the alternative growth measures. Then we have the VPK law. And in the VPK law, it states that if you receive VPK funding, then your pre-K and kindergarten, both of those non-tested teacher groups should be implementing either the portfolio or an approved AGM. Then we had the Tennessee Literacy Act come along, and it states that the Universal Reading Screener can be that approved AGM for pre-K kindergarten, first, and second grade. The alternative growth measure, whether that's the portfolio or your universal reading screener, that makes up 35% of your teacher's final evaluation score, their LOE. This is an individual growth score, just like TVOS. There are 7 different universal reading screeners that have been approved to be used as your alternative growth measure, and you see those listed here. These screeners are for K through second grade. The ones with a star, so Ameswell Plus, FastBridge, and Renaissance Star, can also be universal reading screeners for pre-K teachers. So back to the AGM tab on the team website, you will see that information that I just shared with you. And in the next row, you will see the growth score guidance. And this is a summary that we'll go deeper into in a few minutes. But it just lets you know that your teachers do receive a growth score from the universal reading screener. But if they have less than 6 students in their data, they will not generate an individual growth score. They'll be treated as non-tested teachers. Other than those, teachers will receive an individual growth score unless the data from your district's vendors or there's a lack of data quality. Those teachers will receive an incomplete and they will not generate an LOE. We also have resources here on this page. You will see that the rostering guidance is coming soon. As soon as we have guidance on how you will roster your teachers this year, we will email you and we will have another office hour. But currently we have a document that explains how the growth score is calculated. We have the universal screener testing windows document, as well as the universal screener administration guidelines. And then we have our contact information, both for if you have questions around your growth scores, that's team.question as far as the growth measures. If you have questions about implementing the universal reading screener, you will contact TN Universal Screener at tn.gov. As the AGM lead, you have several roles and responsibilities. Every district and charter that selected to implement the universal reading screener as an AGM also selected an AGM lead to support those teachers in the grades that they chose around receiving their AGM score. So we have several responsibilities that you will be doing this year. One, you're going to maintain accurate teacher rosters, and that will be reflective on what grades did your district choose to implement the universal reading screener as a growth score. You're going to ensure that those rostered teachers have tested their students within the testing windows. You're going to ensure that the teacher of record in the URS platform is also the teacher of record in EIS for the ELA class. Keep in mind, the universal reading screener is a reading assessment. So these teachers are receiving their growth score for reading. So the EIS reading teacher should be the one that is linked to the students. Students cannot be attributed to any other teachers in EIS. You want to ensure that your state student identification numbers are accurate, that the teacher license, the district information, your school identification numbers, that all of those are correct. Other than your student identification numbers, all of the information can be found in TN Compass on your educator's evaluation tab. You want to work directly with your universal reading screener vendors to correct any errors that you receive from error reports. The vendors receive these error reports after the screener window, and here you will see a link to the windows. So you want to make sure you have that information. Any uncorrected errors could result in your teachers not receiving a score, and therefore they would get an incomplete. An incomplete growth score does result in no LOE. Now I'm going to toss it over to Miss Amy.
Thank you. So when you were thinking about this, Tracy's told you a lot of things that have to happen in order to get these scores. So there, you more than likely will need to work with some other people in your district. So we've kind of compiled a list of, you may want to know who takes care of all this in your district. Could be you, it could be somebody else. So you need to know who manages your SIS package, your student information system, to make sure that the student ID numbers are correct, teachers' TLNs are correct in there. Also your EIS coordinator. Those TLNs and state ID numbers, they pull from your SIS package. So if you get them right in the first place, they should be correct in the next one. But you may have to work with your EIS coordinator to get those updated. Your RTI coordinator, that would be the person who's probably overseeing the testing and making sure that the state's URS guidelines are followed. Your testing coordinator, teacher, that person can help you make sure that they're given during the window. The tests are given during the testing window and also following those guidelines. Your evaluation configurator can help you make sure all of your teachers are staffed, and T-Encompass can help you find TLNs if you need help with that. And then your URS vendor contact, you've got to make sure that those exception reports are corrected in order for your data to be cleaned. So to receive growth scores, Tracy mentioned earlier, teachers who have fewer than 6 students with complete data sets from fall to spring will not generate an individual universal reading screener score, and they will have their levels of overall effectiveness, their LOE scores, calculated as non-tested teachers. This is the same thing that we do with TVAS. If a teacher doesn't have, we have 2 models in TVAS, fewer than 6, for the GAIN model, which is the elementary model, they do not get an individual growth score and use their school-wide score. Implementing teachers who do not generate an individual growth score from the URS due to lack of district data quality will receive an incomplete and will not generate. This is why it is so important for you to make sure that all of this data is clean and correct. So your next steps, you're going to make sure that you know what grade levels your director of schools chose to implement the AGM-URS in for your district or charter. Assemble your implementation team. Think about the people you need to work with and meet with. Notify your selected grades, those teachers, that this will be used as their 35% individual growth measure for the 24-25 school year. It's only for the selected grades, whatever selection was made before your district. It's only those grades, not all of them necessarily. Share resources from the AGM page on the team website with your teachers. They're going to want to know how these scores are calculated and such. And give the universal reading screener during the testing window. That is very important.
And one thing I want to note about the testing window document, it does say K3. And the reason for that is it is a requirement in Tennessee that kindergarten through 3rd grade gives the universal reading screener. That is not necessarily part of their growth score. It's for every K3. But if your district chose to use the universal reading screener as an alternative growth score, and they also selected pre-K, then pre-K teachers must also follow all of the same guidelines that the K2 teachers follow. So they have to also test in this window and follow the exact same guidelines as kindergarten. So although it doesn't say pre-K on this testing window, if you chose pre-K, then you are required to follow the same guidance in pre-K. So back to the resources. As I said, we have lots of resources on our team website. Please note on the homepage, we have a section called Recently Added. So as things are released, as they're new, you will see them under the AGM-URS. So currently the newest document is the testing window document. So you'll be able to find that on the homepage. We also have, as I've already shown you, the AGM page. So here is all the information around AGM-URS. The resources section, I want to take you to, oops, I'm so sorry. I want to remind you once again that we have the guidance on when teachers say, well, how is my growth score calculated? That is all there in a document on how growth scores are calculated. as well as how to administer the URS and the testing windows. The office hours that we have will be here on the office hour tab. We have an AGM office hour link right here. If you click on that, it will take you to our AGM office hours. You'll see today's date and today's topic. Here is where we will drop this PowerPoint, and here is where we will drop the YouTube link recording of today's meeting. We have several ways you can get support. If you have questions about the growth measures, about alternative growth measures, then email us at team.questions@tn.gov. If you have questions or you need information around the Tennessee Universal Reading Screener, then you will email tn.universalscreener@tn.gov. If you have questions about how is growth calculated, here's another link to that same document that I shared on the resources section with the alternative growth guidance on how growth is calculated per each of those 7 approved universal screeners. I'm going to toss it back to you, Amy.
All right, LEA contacts. We just want to remind you, those have just been put in for the 24-25 school year. Periodically, please check and update those throughout the year as necessary. If an AGM lead changes and we don't have a new contact, then they will miss out on information. So please, if you're not the person to do that, please check with your evaluation configurator to make sure that's being done.
And these are the directions on how to do that. If you do have access, you will click on LEA settings. You won't be able to change settings, but you can click on the contact button, and then there is the alternative growth AGM-URS lead contact. So this is where your district will change that person if the person who is currently there is not the contact anymore, or if you need to make any edits. It's right here. So that is the end of our presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and toss it over to Micah to read to us any questions that you may have.
I have a few, and I've got a couple of answers with them. The AGM document referenced IEP and 504 accommodations. Are there allowable accommodations? And we recommend defaulting to vendor specifications for allowable accommodations in addition to what is on the child's IEP or Section 504. As long as the accommodations do not change the construct of the measure, they are likely allowable. Vendor administration guides often will give more direct information on these options.
Thank you, Micah.
Okay. Has the contract been approved for the state to pay for Ames Web for pre-K? Including pre-K in the TN-URS is still in process. The department will notify districts and charters if there is a change to what is available at no cost. Okay. The next, what specific measures will be administered to pre-K in Ames Web? We recommend administering any assessment the district wants. The subtests needed vary by vendor. For TN-URS, you must administer at minimum auditory vocabulary, print concepts, and initial sounds. When will the rostering process begin?
I can take that one, Micah.
Okay, go ahead.
We begin rostering teachers for alternative growth measures beginning at the end of September, the 1st of October. And this is both for the AGM-URS and for portfolio. We do not roster prior to that. So it gives you time to gather the information on who is teaching these grades. And the rostering process is for the EE team. So that's for our team to know who receives these scores. You will begin the teachers giving the universal reading screener based on those testing windows. So that's not the rostering process. We're not talking about rostering them with your screener. This is the rostering process of rostering them with our team that starts late September, 1st of October. And we will send an email to all of the AGM lead contacts that Amy was just talking about that are in T and Compass. We will send you an email when it's time to begin our rostering process, and we will walk you through exactly how you send us that information.
Going back to the required subtests, Renaissance Star is Star Early Literacy. And for FastBridge, we recommend confirming which subtests contribute to their composite. So they give us the composite. So you'll need to confirm with FastBridge. Are PE, Fine Arts, and World Languages required to complete a portfolio?
As I said at the very beginning in the description part around alternative growth measures, every district and charter is required to choose one non-tested teacher group, and that's the ones that are required, one group. If you receive VPK money, it's two groups, it's pre-K and kindergarten. But all of those other models are options. So to answer this question, it is not required unless it's the one. Some districts that don't receive VPK money, their one required might be Fine Arts, or their one required, they may choose PE. So it's up to your district what models they choose, whether it's a portfolio model or an alternative growth model.
I know there's some sitting out here, but I don't know exactly.
And I think, did that answer? I think the lady that answered the question is the one on the any other questions?
Yes. So do we pay for pre-K Ames Web and hope to get reimbursed? So at this time, we don't have an answer on whether or not the contract would go through. So we will just let the districts know when that becomes available. Will we be conducting any observations?
All the evaluation policy states that every licensed teacher should be receiving their observation. So yes, you conduct your observations as normal. The LOE is made up of observations, growth, and achievement. So what we're talking about today is a growth measure. So the observations are one of those three components. So your observations move right along as they would. And then this is separate. This is the growth. This is to be used as that growth component as part of their LOE. Ms. Phillips, does that answer your question? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, great. And Jenny, did I answer your question about the other portfolio models?
Okay, I'm sorry. I got a phone call, right? I
Yes,
think
yes.
you had
I just
to
wanted to
unmute
make
me,
sure
and I'm so sorry. And I didn't hear that. Do you mind repeating, or you can email me back later? I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I think your district chose it. They're not, every district is required to do one non-tested teacher group. VPK districts are required to choose pre-K and K, but all of the other non-tested groups are options. So if your director of schools chose it, and I believe in your district he did, then yes, they are required. If it is chosen in the LEA settings by your district, then they are all required. And that goes for all of these non-tested teacher groups.
Okay.
If your district chose first grade AGM, every first grade teacher. Is that more to your question?
Yes, but they could use a different measure other than the portfolio, because I'm going to meet with them, and this is the first time. No. Okay.
The only ones that can use this universal reading screener
Are the
are
ones that you just
pre-K,
taught, pre-K,
pre-K, K
1 and
1 and
2?
2.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
third grade
That's,
gives the screener, but it's not an option as a growth score.
yeah, they
And
get their own.
they
I'm
do
new to
TDOTs.
this, and
That's
so
okay.
I've got to meet with my teachers next week, and they're going to have small strokes. So I just wanted to make sure that one more time somebody said that to me, and because you know how this is going to go.
It
So
it is required when your director of schools makes that selection, then
you
it's
do.
required. It's not an option.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry if I
No,
disrupted.
that's a great question.
Yeah, to jump in on that one, Tracy, decisions are made at the district level on growth scores, not at the teacher level. So
Mhm.
once the district's opted in, that is the choice.
Mhm.
It's not made at the teacher level, if that's a little clearer.
So could they have made a different option for
No,
those teacher groups?
the district makes the decision. So when the district elects to implement PE portfolio, all PE teachers implement that portfolio.
Right, but what I'm asking is, could the district have made? Could we have made a
The
different
the district has options as long as they're meeting the minimum standards of the law, which is if VPK money is received, they must
VPK? I'm not worried
implement,
about that. We do the portfolios because they don't want, they don't want to take the
and
chance.
that meets
Yes.
it. So
Yes. And the question, like what's happened is our understanding of the PE fine arts and world languages. And I didn't do this one. And if we need to talk so that everybody else
Yeah.
is not aggravated by my
I think that's
questions.
probably a good idea, just to make sure that
Okay.
we're so
Yeah.
if you'll hang on, Tracy, if that's
Yeah, I will.
okay, if she hangs on
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end, we can
Sorry,
talk through the
everybody.
details.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine. And I see a question about verifying what directors chose. If you are not aware of what your director chose, you can email us at Team Questions. You can also reach out to your district leads in the LEA settings. They have what they chose. In many cases, there are some exceptions where we are uploading those currently, but you can reach out to us if you're not aware and you don't have anybody to ask today.
Okay. Going back to the accommodations, Jessica, can you speak a little bit on that, please?
Absolutely. So we always recommend defaulting to your selected vendors' suggestions within their administration materials for allowable accommodations. So in their administration guides and scoring guides, they will typically have a section on allowable accommodations. So while you may have your students' 504s and IEPs, you would still want to also consider what the vendor considers allowable and acceptable for those particular subtests to make sure that you're measuring the right thing. So there's not really a default answer to say, yes, this is allowed or this isn't allowed per subtest. We would recommend that you go along with your specific vendor's recommendations for those subtests. If you need information to get connected to somebody who can provide that answer to you, then we can certainly help you all with that.
We have a question of, will there be another meeting soon? This is my first year in this role, and I want to make sure I understand everything.
Ms. Phillips, we won't have another meeting around what is the AGM. As far as our team, the educator effectiveness team that I introduced earlier, our responsibility is to receive these growth scores. So we don't have another meeting scheduled because all of the information that we have has been shared today. We will have another meeting though prior to the rostering process. And so again, be looking for that meeting most likely around October. But I will let you know as soon as we have that in place. So that will be the next meeting, is how to roster your teachers with our team to ensure we have their information to send scores to T Encompass.
And Haley,
This-
if you'd like to talk about your office hours.
Yes, so our student supports team does offer office hours, and as part of some targeted office hours that we are offering for this upcoming school year, we will be addressing the universal screening process, specifically the universal reading screeners and district's responsibilities associated with the universal reading screener. We can certainly drop that link to those office hours here.
Thank you, Haley. And I just want to reiterate one more time, because we have a lot of districts and charters that chose to implement the universal reading screener for pre-K. So anything that you see coming out around K3 universal reading screener, because it is not required, that pre-K is not in that title, but if you are implementing the screener as a choice for pre-K, all of those meetings, all of that information applies to you too. So just be sure that you are following all of the same universal reading screener guidelines in pre-K if you have chosen to use it as their growth score.
Is it okay to implement portfolio in pre-K in AGM-URS in K if you receive VPK funding? Or do you have to use the same measure in VPK and K?
When the directors of school and the evaluation configurators went into T and Compass, each grade has a place where they can have a selection. So when they chose something for pre-K, because you have to make a choice in pre-K, they could choose portfolio or URS. So to answer that question, they could make one choice in pre-K, a different choice in kindergarten. They can make another choice in first grade. They can make a different choice in second grade, and so on. So each grade, there was an option. They can choose portfolio or the screener.
And also, just to clarify, because we've had some confusion in the past, if your district chose pre-K, it's not just VPK classrooms, it is all pre-K classrooms. So you had said VPK in the question, so I just want to make sure that it is understood that it's not just VPK classrooms that are administering this for the growth score. It is all pre-K, whether it's VPK or not, if the district chose so. Can a portfolio be used for math content only?
If your district chose the universal reading screener, then your math teachers will not get an individual growth score. You cannot do both the universal reading screener and portfolio. So the answer would be no. Math teachers cannot do portfolio while reading teachers do universal reading screener. It's either portfolio for the entire grade or it's universal reading screener for the entire grade. And if you departmentalize, your math teachers do not get a growth score.
Okay, Tracy, we have a question about special ed pre-K.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to clarify what qualifies as exempt and not?
For the universal reading screener, there are no exemptions. That if you are a pre-K teacher, you give the universal reading screener. So there are no exemptions, correct, Jessica? All teachers give the screener, whether they're special ed teachers or not.
So all students have to be universally screened. If there is a student who can't access the universal reading screener, they are still required to be universally screened. So they would need to take an alternative, but that would not contribute a score to the AGM value. So if there are students who cannot access the regular URS, those students would not contribute a score.
And if a teacher had less than 6, and that is all they taught, they would not receive a growth score.
I believe so. Let me pull up that document. But if you know that is the number off the top of your head, I trust you.
That's the number. That's the
yeah.
number that we.
So those, that formula, that document, it'll show you sort of the values there. But they do need at least the minimum number of students to contribute.
But thinking about Ms. Paula, when you were thinking about rostering teachers, the AGM universal reading screener is a little different. you will be rostering, if your district chose pre-K, you are rostering all pre-K teachers. If they chose kindergarten, you are rostering all kindergarten and so forth, all first grade, all second grade. And then when the screener is given, like Jessica said, and those student connections are made through EIS, and when we receive growth scores, those teachers will generate a growth score. Again, if those kids that were sped are not in that calculation because of whatever reason, but those teachers will receive a growth score as long as they have more than 6 students connected to them. So you we'll talk about the rostering process, but thinking about the screener windows are about to open, I think in about a week. Everyone needs to be screening their students. If that's a grade that your district chose to implement the screener as a growth measure.
Just clarifying, does IDEA pre-K have to use portfolios since the VPK pre-K does?
Say that one more time, Micah.
Said, does IDEA pre-K have to use portfolios since the VPK pre-K does?
These are 2 separate implementations. And I see Terry's question too. So don't get portfolio and AGM Universal Reading Screener implementations crossed. If you are implementing Universal Reading Screener, you follow all of the Universal Reading Screener guidelines. If you are following the student growth portfolio, which is what I think Terry's talking about, in the student growth portfolio, self-contained SPED teachers are in that exemption in the portfolio model guidebook. There are no exemptions for the Universal Reading Screener model. The Universal Reading Screener tests all students in reading across the entire school. The portfolio is a totally separate implementation model. Any other questions?
That's all we have in the chat. When will 23-24 growth be uploaded?
We have not received the 23-24 growth scores yet. This is very similar when you think about, like I said, don't compare URS AGM to portfolio. You can somewhat compare AGM-URS to TVOS. Our team receives TVOS scores and our team receives Universal Reading Screener scores. So that I would suspect that we will receive them about the same time that we receive TVOS scores. So until we receive them, we cannot upload them. So they will be uploaded after the scores have been generated and we have received them. That's for 23-24. If you chose to implement it last year. Well, if there are no other questions, I don't know, Micah, you can stop the recording and we can hang around if you had any other questions that you would like to ask us, or if not, have a great afternoon, and we will be sending you the AGM contacts information when we are ready for our next office hour to talk about rostering.
One more thing, just to make sure that we're clarifying, and Terry, please make sure that I asked your question correctly or that we're clarifying correctly. A gen ed funded preschool must implement portfolio or URS. Only if you are VPK funded, if you are required to implement preschool portfolio or URS. If you do not have VPK money, then you may choose to implement pre-K, but you just have to implement one non-tested teacher group. So if you do not receive VPK money, then you can choose any of the groups.
And
But if
and keep in mind, this is not something that's being decided now. This was already decided by your director of schools over a month ago. So these selections have already been made. So if your director of schools signed off, whatever they picked is what your district or charter is going to implement for 24-25. And again, if you're not sure, but you know you're the AGM lead, you're welcome to stick around, and we can help you to find what you are implementing.
so far, that's everything in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you all and have a great afternoon.